There's a woman who is doing work that a lot of people don't know about. And I feel it's my responsibility to make sure that every time I have a chance that we highlight what she's doing. It is literally on the ground work and making certain that people who are getting caught up in this craziness that's going on with our immigration system and what's happening right now, specifically with the administration, is that there's a champion out there. And we've had the opportunity and the blessing of having her with us before, and that would be our good friend, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. Good morning, Kate, and welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I woke up this morning literally on the right side of the bed, but my brain it just wouldn't plug in fast enough. I was like, have you ever had that happen? You wake up on the right side of the bed, but your brain still goes, where am I? So,
oh, yeah. That's most mornings before coffee for me.
Well, Henry and I were joking about that this morning because we both had that same occurrence. Thank you for being with us again, Kate. I know that to say that you have been busy would be probably an understatement, but you are not only have been busy, you've been highly effective in what you've been doing in supporting folks during this crazy time on the topic of immigration. And there's a couple things I wanted to chat with, but I also wanted just to kind of give you the mic to talk about some of the stuff that is happening. And you know, I'll dive right into the deep end of the pool with what we saw last week in Los Angeles with Senator Padilla and what we saw yesterday in New York with the city's controller. Very chaotic scenes of elected officials or government senior level people being literally manhandled by I don't even want to give them the honor of ICE or immigration officers because they're acting more like thugs. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'd love for our listeners to hear what you have to say about what those two situations have meant or to you and how you've seen them.
Well, I mean, obviously it's very chilling when we see elected officials manhandled and arrested, because what does that mean about the regime that we're living under? But on the flip side of that, I'm grateful that people are seeing what, frankly has been going on. I mean, in some cases for years, but really has ramped up over the last several months. I mean, this is how immigrants who are not criminals have been treated, to the thousands on a daily basis. And so these lawmakers are just showing us what's actually going on all over the place. So the more attention that it gets, I think ultimately potentially the quicker we'll get a change in policy, I hope.
Is there any, speaking of the word hope, is there any hope or thought that Republicans who have the ability to essentially shut this down or certainly redirect it in the House of Representatives on a federal level, do you think that they have the courage and the guts to do what their power affords them?
I don't have faith that they have the guts to do what ought to be done, which is just a mass sort of revolt against the policies and standing up and speaking out about what's going on. But I do expect and have heard that there's sort of a secret, or let's say a quieter shift going on where lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are really not okay with what's happening. And while Republicans might be too afraid to stand up loudly to Trump, maybe what this means is that legislation has a better chance over the next year of passing, or something could occur. But I don't think we're going to see some very loud thing because, I mean, the Republicans are just so afraid of standing up to Trump.
Yeah, and that's where the other side of the aisle, I asked a similar question. Now that we're seeing, and people have said that Democrats are doing enough, and I guess what I always ask, well, what's the definition of enough? Maybe more might be a more appropriate word. But when you see a senator or you see a state executive in the sense of New York have that happen to them, and then you see what took place in New Jersey with I'm drawing a blank on her name, but the congresswoman who was arrested. From what I've read, and I've tried to do a job of reading everything, they're simply doing what they're allowed to do in the course of helping people go through the process. What is it that they've done wrong? I mean, in your observation, obviously we weren't there on the ground, but what do you see, if anything, that they did not do correctly in the moment that they were in? These three, Padilla, Lander, and I'm drawing a blank on the congressional representative in New Jersey.
Yeah, I am as well. Well, I've seen the videos of Padilla and Lander, and neither of those videos did I see them act illegally or inappropriately or do anything that would warrant any kind of physical detention. I mean, Padilla just walked into a press conference and asked a question and identified himself as a senator. And, maybe Kristi Noem didn't want her precious press conference interrupted, but a way to have handled that with grace would have been to turn to him and say, at worst, thank you for your question. I understand this is important. I'm in the middle of a press conference, and I promise I will talk to you right after this. That would have been such a simple way to respond. And Lander was simply asking ICE agents if they had a warrant to arrest the man that they were attempting to arrest. And they could have said, our belief is that we don't need a warrant and that you are wrong and we're going to take him into detention and we'll have our supervisor contact you. I mean, there are just clear human ways to handle these, even if the law enforcement officers don't agree with whatever is being said to them at the time, that don't require grabbing someone and, cuffing them and throwing them to the ground. I mean, it's just an absurdity. And I think really I've been thinking, I think about this all the time, but what this comes down to, I think a lot of this is Stephen Miller. He is the one really behind the scenes directing DHS to ramp up these arrests and, doesn't matter, like go to Home Depot, do what must be done, separate the families, who cares? They are just placing immense pressure on these law enforcement agents on the ground, and not to exempt them from any responsibility. I mean, these DHS officers are, should be absolutely ashamed of themselves for the way that they are behaving out there on the streets, and frankly should be quitting their jobs. I mean, anybody who's doing what they're doing hopefully will live a lifetime of shame because of the way that they're treating people. I mean, I have, I'm in Texas. I had 14 clients get picked up last week who were attending their court hearings or their ICE check-ins. They were doing the legal process the right way, no criminal history, and for no reason whatsoever, just disappeared from their families. And, one of my clients, I can speak about her because her family has gone public. I mean, her name's Carmen. Her husband, Eduardo, is a U.S. citizen, and they have 6 daughters. 5 of them are U.S. citizens. The littlest is 7. Her name is Galilea. And Carmen went to a court hearing, and the judge dismissed her proceedings, which is a whole separate problem that's occurring. And Carmen got arrested, and she's been in detention for several weeks now, and it's devastating. I mean, just the trauma on these families, and for what? I mean, nothing. They're breaking no laws whatsoever. And it's just, the whole thing is so absolutely disgusting. And, I think I was heartened to see the protest, the No Kings protest, and how many people showed up, because the more public outcry that there is, I think, my hope, at least, is that there will be some response to that and that they might dial this back a little bit. But maybe not until Stephen Miller's, out of the picture.
Yeah, and I felt the pause, and I didn't mean to interrupt your pause because it was a good one in terms of what can be the direction that Stephen Miller ends up going. The representative that I was thinking of, with the help of one of our producers, is LaMonica McKeever, who was also, and she's now been indicted. And that leads me to a question, and just for our listeners, we're talking with immigration attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is, I use the word rock star, but she's a patriot, Henry. She is a patriot, because she understands what's in the Constitution and what should be afforded to people that are on this land, inside of these borders. And that's what makes you patriotic, Kate, is that you understand that and you're trying to implement that for the purposes of bettering people's lives or just keeping people's lives from turning into a chaotic mess. So again, thank you for that. The question I want to ask you is, and it gets back to this, the way in which ICE agents are performing. Is it wrong, or it maybe illegal is a better word than wrong, because that's perception versus legality, for a elected official or in this case, a controller to escort a person? Because that seems to be one of the things that's happened, is that when an official is escorting someone from A to B, that they've been grabbed. I mean, like with Ms. McCaver and with Lander in New York, they, from what I read and heard, were escorting someone from A to B, and then they were accosted and it got physical, and here we go. Is there anything illegal about what they're doing in that? Do you follow my question?
Yeah, no, I do. I think a lawmaker who identifies themselves should be afforded more deference and respect by law enforcement agents in a moment. So I do think that they can interfere in a different way than, a layperson, or just someone on the street should. I mean, the general rule of thumb for those of us who witness enforcement actions going on is that we should be excellent witnesses and not interfere. But an excellent witness takes down all the details of the agents, how many there were, what they were wearing, did they identify themselves, did they have badges on, what were the plates on their cars, get as much video as you can. Talk to the person being detained, that's fine. Tell them you have the right to remain silent. Don't share your information. You can do all of that. All of that is legal. What you shouldn't do is interfere in the law enforcement action, because that can, sort of ratchet up the violence of the interaction, and law enforcement can feel threatened, and then things can get violent. So that's just a general rule of thumb about witnessing. But like I started with, when there's a lawmaker there and they say, I'm the comptroller, I'm a senator, and I have questions about this, one would think that the law enforcement agents would, pause and say, maybe I ought to rethink what I'm doing here, or at least have a conversation with this person as opposed to detain them. So no, I don't think that they were doing anything illegal. I didn't see Lander, did he physically get in the way between the agents and the person being detained?
It depends on which video you're looking at and from what angle. And unfortunately, in each case, it doesn't look as though he was, or that he did. He was, he was moving through, and what it's sort of, just like, no disrespect, but it's like they're just bum rushing folks now.
They are.
And the videos are just horrible. I saw one that it makes my skin crawl, where there was a woman who turned out to be pregnant in her vehicle, and two were crawling in the front of the vehicle, and one was coming from the rear seat, trying to snatch her out of the car. And there were people yelling, she's pregnant, she's pregnant. And my concern is this, and I'm just going to say this, Kate, and I'd be lying to myself, and I never want to do that, but I'd be lying to the audience if I didn't say my concern is that they're going to roll up on the wrong group of people. And those wrong group of people, there's going to be some agents that are going to be expired because, and they aren't going to be prepared for it, because they're going to roll up on the wrong folks at the wrong time. And I don't want to see that, because I know that in his deep, dark recesses, that is what Stephen Miller wants to see happen, because that will then give the administration, in their mind, the reason and the right to go forward with some form of martial law. Am I crazy in that, or have you thought those same thoughts?
Well, I had that thought about the situation in Los Angeles, and then when we were leading up to the days of the protests, it really sure did seem like the administration wanted violence from protesters so that they could claim, a necessity of response. And so I think that's my that's my concern, is that the minute that, you know, someone interferes in a violent way or protests turn violent, all of that then all of a sudden it gives the administration the excuse that it wants to do everything that it's already doing. But right now, everybody's staying pretty peaceful and nonviolent, and they just look like a bunch of thugs. And that's, you know, I think that's actually the best positioning, because everybody is watching and seeing, and thankfully so many of these things are being recorded and going viral, that, you know, like the pregnant woman in the car. And, you know, here in, I'm in Austin, which is near the San Antonio courthouse, and the day that my client Carmen got arrested, there was another woman and her 7-year-old little boy who were also arrested. And the mama was just having like a panic attack. I mean, she was just sort of like dry heaving and just panicking. And her little boy was standing behind her like, Mama, it's okay, I'm here. And they were in the back of this bus, like, you know, getting shoved into the bus. And I think, as horrific as those images are, and they get seared into our brains, they're going viral and everybody's seeing them. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the response to that is just a complete intolerance by the American public of these activities.
Yeah, I played a clip earlier at the beginning of the show about intolerance. We have to be intolerant to this chaos. Mayor Brandon Johnson here in Chicago, and of course Governor Pritzker here in Illinois, have both said that ICE is going to have to, if they do it wrong, they're going to have to pay a price. And Mayor Johnson has gone toes to the line of saying that includes, or I'm not taking off the table, if ICE agents come into Chicago and they perpetrate anything that's viewed as violent or illegal and they break our statute, they're going to get arrested. That's the first mayor that I've heard say those words, but it doesn't surprise me that it's coming from the Chicago mayor. And I'm just curious of your thoughts about that.
I mean, you know, it's like one side does it to the other, and then what do they expect? You know, I mean, I could certainly see that some of the actions of these ICE agents are in violation of laws. Yeah. Local and state laws, for sure. And if they're going to be arrested, I mean, you know, that would raise some very interesting legal issues in a criminal court. But it wouldn't, let's just put it this way, it wouldn't surprise me. And it's that kind of thing is not going to go down where I live in Texas, of course. But it wouldn't surprise me coming out of Illinois.
Yeah, so we'll leave it there, because I'll keep my opinion on that out of the mix. But I can see you're smiling, going. You're probably high-fiving, air high-fiving. Listen, I made you laugh, I made you chuckle, but as we wrap up, I want to give you a compliment on, as always, on the fight that you have immersed yourself in. I know it's your life's work, but I have to ask you this question as we wrap up, Kate. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks. You know, I'm okay. It's real heavy stuff, and you know, the thing that I just keep going back to is it's hard being an immigration lawyer in times like these, but it's a whole lot harder to be an immigrant. So we're just keep going. We've got a big conference for immigration lawyers. The national conference is occurring this week. And so being around colleagues and learning strategies and tactics will be uplifting, I hope.
Yeah, it is. There's some strength that comes from those numbers of that sort of collective positivity and the reinforcement that you'll get from being around folks who are, you know, not in a cult, but thinking the same way, because it's about improving the livelihoods of so many people that are here in the United States of America. So kudos to you and your colleagues for being able to get together. And our audience greatly appreciates you and the work that you're doing. Folks that listen to us all over the country and however the way they follow us. You guys have to follow Kate. Get to her website, and I'll let Kate give a shout out to herself on how folks can follow you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, my name is Kate. My last name is Lincoln, like the president, Goldfinch, like the bird, and I'm on all the socials. And if I could just say one last little thing, do we have a second for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I get asked all the time these days is what can I do to help? Because people think, I've donated, I've volunteered, I've called my legislators, like what else is there? And it's really just the little things and lifting up immigrants in every way that you can and know how, checking on your immigrant friends, giving 5-star Google reviews to the immigrant-owned restaurants that you would visit, just go around throughout your day sprinkling love and appreciation for immigrants and what they bring to this country. And if we can just start doing that, like on a massive scale, spreading joy and appreciation, the tides will eventually turn.
That's great message for all of us, Kate. And we appreciate not only you being with us, but the hard work that you're putting in. Enjoy your time with your colleagues. We'll have you back in a few weeks to give us an update in terms of what's happening, what you're doing, and what we all can be doing to make this thing go away and get better. So thank you, Kate, for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great day.
I will. You too. Bye-bye. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, guys. What can I tell you? She is a definition of a patriot right now. And that's why I said it that way earlier. And I want you guys to follow her. And she's done great stuff. One of the things I didn't get a chance to mention, but I'll say it now before we hit this break, is she's put together a mobile legal aid and education office. And basically, it's a bus. It's a bold new initiative. Immigration attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, with over 20 years of experience based in Austin, has launched a bold new initiative, Al Bus Sin Fronteras, the Bus Without Borders. It's a mobile legal office designed to bring critical education and services directly to rural immigrant communities across Texas, to which many have been limited access to reliable immigration support. She says her project is a celebration of culture, empowerment, and the importance of immigrants to the fabric of American society. So that's what I mean when I say doing it real time and being a patriot. Thanks for being with us during this segment, guys. And I appreciate Kate for taking the time to help us kind of navigate through some of this.